Come and sit with me. How to desire nothing and manifest everything. Written by Richard Dotts. Chapter 1. Come and sit with me. Back in the days when I was just starting out on my spiritual journey, I used to feel an inner impulse, a strong urge to get away from it all and just sit quietly by myself in nature. Back then, my inner state was often tumultuous, and my outer state reflected that. I was constantly worried and fearful that bad things would happen to me, that I would run out of money, or that I would amount to nothing in life if I did not do the right things. I became obsessed with being at the right place at the right time for fear of missing out on life's opportunities. All these unfounded, worrisome thoughts took a toll on my emotional as well as my physical well being. I looked years older than my actual age, walked around with a hunch, and always sucked in my belly. I reasoned that I was exercising my abdominal muscles. My breathing was shallow. I was underbreathing most of the time without even knowing it. Perhaps on an unconscious level, I was depriving myself of my full connection to the universe by limiting my intake of air, a vital universal substance. But even in my most desperate of times, I always felt a sense of connection to nature. I like taking strolls in gardens and parks. There was something about these beautiful places that made me feel a deep sense of connection to the universe despite my tumultuous inner state. Taking a stroll or sitting quietly in nature always made me feel better, no matter what was going on in my life. Looking back, I realized it was the universe calling me forth to a better feeling place where miracles could then happen. The larger part of me knew that all I had to do was to let go and allow, to literally do nothing, and everything would start changing for the better without my active intervention. Of course, my rational self did not allow for that possibility. I continued to worry incessantly and perpetuate my stuck states for many years. I remember being strangely drawn to other quiet yet opulent places. I frequently visited a huge bookstore with wooden paneled flooring and full length glass windows overlooking the ocean. I had a special feeling in that quiet bookstore, browsing the self help and spiritual sections for hours on end. Somehow, the environment in the bookstore made me feel safe and protected from the outside world. I felt that I was literally in the company of these great spiritual masters. I felt a sense of deep interconnection as I read their words and ideas. Today, the bookstore has gone out of business, and while I still enjoy being in nature, I no longer do so as frequently. This is because I have truly learned to let go on the inside. The beauty of nature and the universe lies within me now, and I don't have to actively go to a certain physical place in order to seek it out or to cultivate that feeling. It is the same for you too. You can make a conscious decision at any time to change your inner state, to give up your old habits of worrying about the present or future, and in so doing, completely change your own reality. I no longer walk around with a hunch today or limit my intake of breath. I breathe deeply and fully enjoy every moment. I am genuinely happy, and everything good in life just flows so freely for me. Life is perfect for me in every moment, and I can't wait to jump out of bed in the morning. Immerse myself wholeheartedly in the day's work before repeating that cycle again the very next day. Life truly energizes me now because I no longer deny my connection to life. All of this happened as a result of consciously and persistently practicing the techniques that I have shared with readers in my books. Some of these techniques were learned from spiritual masters, but most of them was through trial and error. I applied what I learned from the spiritual masters in my own life, observed what worked or what didn't, and kept making small adjustments. Along the way, I had many aha moments and sweet realizations. This audiobook you're listening to right now is a powerful book. It is quite possibly the most intimate book I have written up to this point. This book is written in a special question and answer format in the form of an imaginary conversation with an old friend. Imagine that both of us have known each other for a long time and we sit down for a chat about manifesting your deepest desires. It is a glorious day in a beautiful garden. There is the melodious chirping of birds in the background, the temperature is just right, and the sun is providing just the right amount of warmth. It is a perfect day. As we sit on the bench by ourselves, you have the opportunity to ask some of your most burning questions about the creative art of manifestation. Reveal your innermost beliefs without being judged, and literally see all the obstacles that have been holding you back just drop away. While the me in the title may seem to refer to myself as the author of this book, there's actually a deeper significance. I invite you to ponder the possibility that the me in the title actually refers to you, the reader. I am inviting you to sit down for a quiet time with your higher self, the greater part of you that is connected to universal oneness and the divine source. What would this part of yourself tell the other part of you? What truths would you like to be reminded of? Your higher self is always brimming with these wonderful, life-changing ideas and can't wait to share them with your rational mind. All you have to do is to sit down and allow it to happen. Back in those days when I sat quietly by myself on the park bench, I was actually having a silent conversation with myself. I was allowing my higher consciousness to tell my conscious mind what it knew through inner stillness and silence. My conscious self picked up on what my higher consciousness had to say, not through words, but through an inner sense of knowing and confirmation that I have described several times in my books. When you allow yourself to sit in stillness, do nothing, and worry about nothing, the insights from your higher universal self come flooding through. These higher universal truths will start permeating your consciousness as you feel yourself being lifted to a higher and higher state of awareness. The closer you are to higher consciousness, the lighter and more joyous you'll feel, because that is your true natural state. Come and sit with me is really an invitation for you to spend some quiet time with yourself. Just for the time you read this book, can you allow yourself to give up your worry, judgmental, and fear thoughts which you have been holding on to for most of your life? I'm not asking you to drop all of your negative thoughts for good, but just to drop them while we spend our time together. You will find that it can happen easily and spontaneously, because the human mind cannot consciously hold two opposing thoughts at once. Therefore, if you will immerse yourself wholeheartedly in my words and in our imaginary conversation, you will find yourself slowly letting go of stubborn resistance that has gradually built up over the years. Reading this book in itself is an exercise in letting go of unwanted resistance. I suggest that you read this book in a beautiful natural setting. Find a place that resonates with you. It can be somewhere in nature, like a scenic park I have pictured on the cover of this book, or it can be your favorite hideout, away from interruptions and the hustle and bustle of daily life. I enjoy reading spiritual books in a quiet place where I can fully absorb the energy of the author's ideas. I have a special corner in my house just for that, where it is brightly lit and away from distractions like my telephone or computer. Reading this book in a place that resonates with you will put you in a state of least resistance and in greatest connection with source energy. Writing this book in a conversational format has several advantages. First, it allows me to break free of the need to stick to one particular theme or storyline. I am able to go off tangent in several different directions if the questions and conversation calls for it. Most importantly, all of the questions in this book have been carefully curated. They are common questions raised by students of this material or by readers who have communicated with me over the years. While my schedule does not allow me to reply to each letter from my readers personally, I appreciate all your thoughts and I do read through most of them. This book is a chance for me to group several related questions together and to answer them all at once. Therefore, there is a good chance that you may see several of your own questions being answered in this book, even the ones you have not yet asked. Read through this book with an open mind, because there may also be answers to questions which you may ask in the future when the time is right. The universe works in mysterious ways. Second, this book contains questions I wish I had asked at the beginning. The journey is all about coming to the right realizations, and sometimes questions can spark that sense of realization in us. The more I do this work, the more I realize that we are all alike in more ways than we realize. Sure, we may want different circumstances and items for ourselves, but what all of us ultimately look for is a sense of inner peace and joy. We want to feel a sense of inner freedom to do whatever we want. The decision to give yourself that sense of inner spiritual freedom is one you can make right here, right now. Do not be tempted to rush through this book and finish it all in one sitting. You can certainly break up our conversation into many smaller parts according to your daily schedule. This is not a book to be read while you are hurried or while you are waiting for someone in a busy cafe, unless you can quiet your mind and tune out all external distractions. This is a book to be savored in a quiet and sacred place, because what we are really doing is entering into a conversation with your higher self. You are encouraged to set the book down, contemplate and ponder upon some great truths. You will be taken through several inner exercises that delve deep into your inner world. This is an exciting and adventurous book where we will go on an inner journey as opposed to an outer journey. Therefore, while you will not be asked to trek up mountains or to take long walks in order to find yourself, you need to be willing to go on an inner spiritual journey with me. This is the journey I have taken over the years, a journey that took more than a decade for me. But you can now take the very same journey in as short a time as you allow yourself to. Changes can happen in the next minute, the next hour, the next day, week, or month. Miracles can happen at any time you allow them to, as long as you release your fixation on current reality and create an opening for the universe to work its magic. And with that, let's begin our journey. I want to give a special thanks to my editor for compiling and coming up with the list of questions in this book. Chapter 2: Manifestations happen when you try very little.
Let's start off with the basics. You have often mentioned that these universal laws work for everything and everyone, yet there are so many people that are struggling out there. Now, if you look around, there is considerable misery and poverty in the world. Why is this so?
That's a good question, and certainly one that needs to be addressed. When I look at all the supposed poverty and lack in the world today, I see it as confirmation and validation that the universe truly gives us the ability to choose whatever reality or outcome we want. We have the power to choose a life of prosperity, well being, and abundance. But more importantly, we also have the power to choose, quote unquote, a life of poverty, of lack, and of limitation. Once you truly grasp the idea that we truly have the power to choose in each and every moment what we want to create, you grasp the enormity and the wonderfulness of all that is and of how this entire universe has been structured. This entire universe has been structured to give us ultimate freedom. I say that some people choose, in quotes, a life of poverty, lack, or limitation because there's nothing holding them back at all. They can decide in this very instant, even quicker than the time it takes to snap our fingers, to turn things around and to create an alternate, more desired reality for themselves. But why are they not doing it? Why are they still stuck in their lackful and limited conditions? That's the power of the human mind and the power of social conditioning I have been talking about and somewhat warning against in all my books. When you belong to a particular community or live among certain groups of people who have been disadvantaged against for the longest time, it can be difficult to change. It can be difficult to see a way out. If your family and friends have been living like this for generations, it can be difficult to achieve a breakthrough. The human mind is really the greatest prison here. There are no physical shackles preventing us from achieving whatever we want to achieve except the self imposed limitations of our own mind, which are often reinforced by our physical surroundings. Let me give you an example of how pervasive this conditioning can be. When I look around me, I observe most of my friends making roughly the same amount of money as their parents and extended family members. That is to say, that if they came from middle class families, they had the notion that making a few $1,000s a month was the norm for them, and that was often what they made in their working lives. Then, I also have a few friends who come from well to do families. Their parents were either prominent lawyers, doctors, or businessmen. These friends perceived making a six-figure income as normal and went on to create the same results in their lives. Most people would say that it is the result of having the right quote unquote connections. But I can assure you that one major factor that plays an important role is our expectations of physical reality. We tend to get what we expect. And so, my friends who came from middle class backgrounds continue to make middle class incomes and live that way, while friends who came from upper class families continue to live in that way. They were living out the conditioning that they have been born with. While I do feel a deep sense of compassion for those who are living in lack, we have to understand that the trust issue lies in the fact that they have not awoken to their true creative powers to change their lives. Some of them may not even see the need to change their lives because they have settled into a rut. I admit that when one is living in dire situations, it can be difficult to see a way out, but it is still possible to do so bit by bit.
Wow, that's an amazing perspective. Is it possible to change this conditioning or to undo the effects of it?
It is definitely possible, and that is something I have been advocating in all of my books. All of my books teach methods to get away from the pervasive and often negative human conditioning we have received since we were young. The first step to rid yourself of this negative conditioning and instill positive beliefs is to become aware that these hidden beliefs exist within you. That is often the first and biggest step. Once you have brought these hidden beliefs to light, to the surface, then dealing with them becomes easy. The issue is that you may be walking around with a whole bunch of hidden beliefs that are sabotaging you, that you didn't even know you have. Let me give you an example from my book, Banned Money Secrets. Readers of that book may recall my hidden unconscious belief about rich people. Whenever I saw someone driving around in a fancy car, I would unconsciously say, I wonder what shady business these people are engaged in.
I remember that story. I also remember that it was your business partner who alerted you to the fact that you kept making the same remark over and over again.
Yes, indeed. I was making the same remarks so many times a day. It was something that seemed so natural to me that I did not even realize I was doing it. How crazy is that? Saying something or using certain words over and over again and still not realizing it. How could that be? Yet that is a common phenomenon that is happening in most people's lives over and over again. They get through the day not noticing that they are being extremely negative or critical or difficult simply because they have always behaved in this way. It feels the most natural to them, just as how passing that remark became the most natural thing for me. It seemed like the most logical thing for me to say at that moment.
What happened after your business partner brought it to your attention?
Instead of fighting him or denying it, I took a long and close look at myself. I became quiet and went into the laboratory of my mind the first chance I could. I began to study past instances when I said the same thing and realized he was right. I was passing that remark a lot. Whenever you pass the same remark, engage in the same actions, or attract the same circumstances into your life, chances are that there is a hidden belief at work that needs to be resolved.
That is very powerful, and I believe you have never phrased it this way before. So, you are saying that whenever there is anything bad recurring in my life, there is a hidden belief at work.
Yes, that's right, in most cases anyway. Most people think that the remark itself is the problem, or the action is the problem, or the outer circumstance is the problem. For example, when my business partner pointed out that I was continually making the same remark, I could have said, Oh, that's a very nasty thing to say. I shall not say it again. But that would only be dealing with the issue on a superficial and behavioral level. I can assure you that this belief will manifest again in some other ways in the future. What you really need to do is to deal with the issue at the level of your beliefs. Look at the underlying belief that is attracting or causing this behavior. In my case, it was the belief that I could never get rich through ethical means. Since I had always seen myself as a very ethical person, this was a conundrum for me. I wanted to be rich, yet because of this limiting belief, I could not allow myself to because I associated wealth with unethical behavior. Abundance and ethics were at two opposing ends of the stick for me. This was a self imposed limitation I had set up for myself, and until I resolved it, manifestations of money could not happen.
As you are talking about it now, I see many other cases where this may be true. Some people believe that career success and family are on separate ends of the stick, or health and wealth may be on separate ends of the stick, and so on.
Yes, indeed. And it is especially important to note that these are all self imposed limitations. You could just as easily take two unrelated concepts and put them onto two opposing ends. If you believed in it strongly enough, you would have set up some very stubborn self imposed limitations for yourself. There are many people who enrich themselves financially by making an ethical living and delivering great value to the world. Far too many to list here. People like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. They're enriching and prospering the world even after their passing. Yet I was blind to all these examples because my hidden belief determined my worldview and limited what I could see. We only see what we want to see. Once you bring these hidden beliefs to light, you will see how illogical they are, and they will fall away and dissolve on their own accord.
This is exciting. What I learn here is that all beliefs are self imposed, and if we can get rid of them, our manifestations will come very quickly, right?
That is, in essence, what I have been trying to teach in all of my books. In the 95.5 code, I talk about manifestation stuck points. These manifestation stuck points are self imposed limiting beliefs. Once you are able to overcome these manifestation stuck points for yourself on the inside, no matter how logical or absurd they are, then your manifestations have to happen very quickly on the outside.
But some people may argue that their limitations are not self imposed, but rather actual real obstacles that prevent them from getting what they want.
You know, that in itself is another self imposed belief. I have never seen anything in my years of doing this work that is an actual, tangible limitation. None, not at all. Every limitation is self imposed. Period. Now, let's suppose that there is really an actual physical obstacle standing in your way. Let's suppose for a moment that it is not self imposed, that it was put in place by a powerful being. If there is really such an obstacle out there, then why are you bothering to fight so hard against it? It is immovable. It cannot be changed. Nothing that you can do can change it. So the lesson here is that if someone wants to argue fervently for their limitations, why are they also trying so hard to change them? If it is really as hard to change as they claim, or as permanent as they claim, why are they still trying to change it? No amount of effort would overcome it, and therefore they should give up on their manifestations. Fortunately, though, there is no limitation that is cast in stone like this. The only way we can cast something in stone is to argue fervently for it. This is how most people operate in the world today. They argue so fervently for their limitations that they become real, then wonder why these universal laws do not work to give them what they want. Universal law is working as usual, as it always has, to bring them more limitations.
So, are you saying that when we come against many obstacles in our manifestation process, that we may be focused more on these obstacles or limitations than what we actually want?
That is correct, and is often a thin line. It is often difficult for beginners to tell whether they are focusing on the desired object or the lack of it. For the longest time, I thought I was focusing on money and financial well being. I thought I was being so positive and using all these positive affirmations and phrases, when in actual fact, my whole being was focused on the lack of money. I didn't know that. Therefore, in all of this manifestation work, we can really be working very hard at doing the wrong things.
How can we prevent this from happening? How can we prevent ourselves from working hard at attracting lack?
By first and foremost, observing the result in your own lives. Are they what is desired? Do you feel a sense of ease and flow? Or do you feel a sense of impatience, worry, and why is it not here yet? If it is the latter, then you have some good soul searching to do. You need to sit down and relook at the methods you are using. Very often, it is because the individual is trying way too hard. I have never heard someone tell me, Richard, manifestations are not happening because I am trying too little. But I have always heard people tell me things are not happening and I am trying so hard. I think that in itself is very telling and insightful. There is a very valuable universal lesson to be learned here.
That is so true. No one has ever said, my good is not flowing because I am trying so little. It has always been the opposite case. What a powerful realization.
That is the whole gist of it. Trying harder only withholds our good from us. This universe does not thrive on hard work and more effort. It thrives on going with the flow. When you go with the flow, everything just flows, and you feel inspired to move to and create from a higher place. Everything just feels right, and ideas flow to you. The path lights up for you. If you talk to successful people who seem to be at the top of everything, you'll find that they don't really work very quote unquote hard at all. Now, they may seem to have packed and hectic schedules, but if you ask them how they are feeling, they will often tell you they are having a ball of a time. They are having so much fun at what they're doing that they don't ever want to stop or take a rest. It does not feel like hard work to them. They are in a good place of inner balance. That's the place you need to be at for manifestations and good things to happen to you. Chapter 3: The Exponential Power of Thought.
Suppose I get a feeling that I am trying too hard. How do I ease off a little? What should I do instead?
This is a good question, in that most people who are trying too hard with their manifestations will never think about slowing down. Instead, they'll often think about trying even harder. Now, the first response to when things are not happening is often, I'm not trying hard enough to make this work. And therefore, they put even more work and more effort into making the whole thing work. Of course, we know by now that all of this is counterproductive. The harder you try to make something happen, the more you emphasize your inner state of lack and limitation. The inner state of someone who tries hard is an extremely forceful and desperate inner state. It is a negative inner state that can never lead to any positive manifestation or outcomes. A person who tries too hard is often one who is desperate and especially worried about things. I know because I was one of these guys. For years, I tried so hard to make these manifestation techniques work, but ironically, nothing happened. The strange thing is that the moment I decided not to try so hard, to give up, everything just happened in one swoop for me. So sometimes we need to give up trying to make some progress. Here's the best advice I can offer for someone who is trying too hard: ease off a little. Stop doing the techniques and methods around the clock. Get off them totally for a period of time if you need to. If you are doing manifestation techniques, writing affirmations, and visualizing for most of your day, it is a sure sign that you are trying too hard to make things happen. So let all of that go. Allow yourself to go a week or two without actively trying any of these techniques. Of course, not doing any of the techniques does not mean that the worrying mind instantly stops worrying, and that is actually the crux of the problem.
If I am understanding you correctly, what you are saying is that a worried mind sees the need to engage in all of these outer directed manifestation techniques.
That is correct. A worrying mind sees the need and has a strong obsession to control future outcomes. Therefore, in its desperate need to control future outcomes, it resorts to the use of all of these manifestation techniques in the hope of changing the course of one's future. It's like trying to change some future undesired outcome so that it will not be undesired. The issue is that the individuals who engage in such actions usually do so from an extreme state of worry, fear, and desperation. They have a "this has to work or else I am done for" kind of attitude. When you have an extremely negative attitude like this, the universe picks up on how you are feeling, on your negativity, and delivers more of it to you. Therefore, if you are asking money to pay the rent because you are down to your last few dollars, your desperation is actually what the universe is picking up on, not your desire for more money. Your desperation is setting into action powerful universal forces that will bring you more circumstances to feel desperate about.
What should someone in such desperate situations do then? Suppose that I really need a particular sum of money by a certain date, or I really need something by a certain time. What should they do?
First, the individual should understand that their fear, worry, and desperate thoughts are not going to be of any help to them in manifesting their desired outcomes. However, they are also in a sort of catch 22 situation because the deadline is just looming around the corner. It is staring at them so big in the eye that they often cannot ignore it. The problem becomes so obvious to them. This, of course, makes it even more difficult for them to change their inner states because physical reality often dominates our perceptions. There are two choices for an individual in such a desperate situation. The first choice, as often recommended by Abraham Hicks, is just to write it out. In other words, to rough out the storm. Abraham Hicks has a funny, or not so funny, depending on your perspective, way of putting this across that I used to have a difficult time understanding in the past. But having lived through all of this, I understand what they're trying to communicate so clearly today. They say, if you are falling out of an airplane at 20,000 feet and have no parachute, then just hold on tight and know that it'll be over soon. What Abraham Hicks is saying is that when you have so much negative momentum and energy going for you, when the manifestation of something undesirable is inevitable, then perhaps it's easier to just crash and start all over again. This is often a case in many situations. Some individuals have spent almost their whole lifetimes worrying or creating negatively. These individuals have set powerful forces in motion that are now impossible to contain. In other words, the manifestation is inevitable. except that it is a manifestation of something unwanted, be it a financial disaster, relationship disaster, and so on. In such situations, it is often better to just let the manifestation occur and then pick up the pieces later. Start from scratch.
If someone has been thinking and feeling negatively for extended periods of time, is it better to just let the negative event manifest?
Sometimes, because it will be futile to try and change something that cannot be changed in the short time that we have. We are dealing with universal forces here. It's like piloting an Airbus or Boeing right up to the point of the runway when it is about to take off, and then suddenly trying to abort the takeoff. It will take a tremendous amount of physical force just to counter the forward or upward momentum of the airplane. Our manifestations work in the same way. Each time you thought and felt either positively or negatively, you were adding to the forward momentum of this huge airplane. Eventually, the forward momentum became so immense that the plane has to lift off the ground. But often, if it is something unwanted, we only notice that the plane is about to lift off at the very last moment when it is too late to do anything. What I would advise the pilot to do here is to let the plane take off as usual and then try to do a landing, rather than to slam on the brakes and risk having the plane tear through parts of the airport.
There's really no way to avert a disaster or a negative situation then?
It's really like the plane analogy I just used. How far along are you on the runway? This is a question which only the individual himself can answer. If the individual has allowed himself to get so far along the runway that a negative manifestation is just around the corner, then it could be too late. So, going back to the earlier example, if the creditors are knocking on the doors and you need $50,000 by Monday and it is Sunday, perhaps that is just too late. Perhaps it is better to just let the creditors take their action while you buy more time. The good news is that in many cases, it is not too late. Things still can be done to avert the unwanted outcome, and you can do so by withdrawing your focus from the outcomes that are unwanted and placing them solely on outcomes that are desired. As I've mentioned before, this is going to be especially difficult to do for someone who has no spiritual training. For someone who is constantly fixated on outer physical reality, more so since the problem is now staring at you in the face. If you constantly let what you see in your reality dominate your attention and hence your focus, it will be difficult for you to create anything desired in the beginning.
I like what you have just said. If an individual constantly allows their physical reality to trump their inner reality, they are going to have a hard time manifesting.
In a nutshell, is what the whole art of manifestation is really about. It is about withdrawing your attention from outer reality and focusing it in on your inner world and inner states. It is about putting your attention wholeheartedly on the desired outcome which you wish to create, even if the thing is not in physical form yet. This is easier said than done for most people, which is why only a small percentage of the population achieve manifestation success. Many of us get angry, worked up, or riled up by things that are happening around us. It still happens to me. I can be driving along a road and suddenly a driver behaves in a manner that just riles me up. I can feel the anger building inside of me. But the thing is that I also let go of it very quickly because I know that any anger, which I allow to build, will lead to unwanted manifestations down the road.
How long does it take for an unwanted emotion or feeling to be physically creative?
Again, I rely on Abraham Hicks for this, and according to them, it takes as little as 17 seconds for a thought to become creative. In other words, when you hold a thought purely for as little as 17 seconds without contradicting it, then similar thoughts of that nature start joining that initial thought in your consciousness by virtue of the law of attraction. Let's suppose that I'm driving along and someone cuts in front of me. I am angry and allow my anger to brew for 17 seconds. Very often, we find that we become even angrier. More and more angry thoughts start forming in our heads. Things like, how could he drive like this? Or, he doesn't even feel sorry for it. It just gets worse by the second, and the reason is because law of attraction is drawing lots of similar negative thoughts to that initial thought. Now, suppose that I hold the thought purely for another 17 seconds for a total of 34 seconds. Then, according to Abraham Hicks, the thought reaches another energy level. If you hold a thought for 68 seconds, it finally has enough momentum, enough power to result in a physical manifestations. And that can either be a very empowering thought or a very scary thought.
So be sure to hold it for 68 seconds. What strikes me is that when we are angry or when we are feeling negative emotions, we tend to think about it purely for a long time.
That's what is scary about it. Have you noticed how pure your anger and negative emotions often feel? When we are worried about something, we are often wholeheartedly immersed in that worry thought. It's like nothing can snap us out of it. That is why it is even more important that we snap ourselves out of it. Some people brood over the same angry things for days on end, venting and complaining to others. They allow themselves to stay stuck at the same emotional place and to feel angry over something for days on end. As I've mentioned several times, they are only hurting themselves because the amount of energy they are putting into feeling those angry thoughts is immense.
I believe Abraham Hicks has also mentioned physical equivalency, which is the number of hours of physical work you have to do to equal the amount of energy in pure thought.
Yes, and that's something so fascinating to me. Abraham Hicks teaches that 17 seconds of pure, uncontradicted thought is equivalent to 2,000 hours of action. Think about that. 2,000 hours of physical action. Think about how much you can actually do in 2,000 hours. That's actually about 1 year's worth of work. And here's the jaw dropper. If you cross that 17-second mark and think a thought purely for 34 seconds, you do not double the number of hours. You actually multiply it by a factor of 10, such that you get an equivalency of 20,000 hours of physical action and so on. Do you see why both our positive and negative thoughts have so much power?
This is mind boggling. What you're saying gives me hope because it means that if we can concentrate on our desire for as little as 68 seconds, then the amount of universal energy behind them is unfathomable.
Not only are we putting tremendous power behind our desires, it also means that we never need to lift a finger to see things to fruition. We do not need to go out there and take mindless action. All we need to do is to focus on the part of tending to our inner vibrations, as I've explained. A caveat is that the whole process works equally well with negative thoughts as well. That's the real showstopper here. So while you may be visualizing and stating your intentions for 10 minutes a day, how do you spend the remaining of your waking hours? That is the whole point I make in my book of the 95-5 code. My point was to show that the rest of your waking hours are creative as well, and until you learn to become aware of what you are creating in those moments, you will not be able to work against the barrage of negative thoughts that you have unknowingly planted throughout the day.
All this is becoming very clear to me now. There is tremendous power in both positive and negative thoughts. For most people, the negative thoughts dominate.
The negative thoughts dominate because all of us are so used to negatively thinking. It's what most of us, and with our untrained minds, automatically revert to. When you talk to anyone and ask them to complete the sentence, I always have to prepare for a blank. Guess what everyone fills in? They always have to prepare for the worst. But that in itself is an illogical thought. Why can't you prepare for the best? Why can't the best happen? If we assume we are living in a really random statistical universe, then the odds of the best and the worst happening should be the same. Yet, why are people so focused on preparing for the worst? That's some food for thought right there. We have been conditioned to believe in lack and limitation and to be addicted to drama and negative emotions because they feel so familiar to us. I used to have this if I'm not worrying, I don't feel normal syndrome because I have come to identify so much with that sickening, worrying feeling. I thought it was the most normal thing in the world to do. But I know today that worrying is not natural. It is not your natural, true, and unlimited state. Your natural state is one of freedom, peace, and joy. Chapter 4: Manifesting through Not Doing.
Is it possible for our minds to automatically revert to positive thinking?
Absolutely. That is the whole point of doing all this manifestation inner work. This is such a powerful point once you realize it. Our human minds, through long periods of social conditioning, have been taught to think negatively by default. As a result, most people create negatively by default. By taking the time and effort to do the inner work necessary, we are training our consciousness to be at a higher level. Instead of defaulting to negative thoughts and emotions all the time, we instead default to positive possibilities, thoughts, and emotions. We feel happy, joyous, and light all the time with no worries or fear. When we are able to remain in this state for most of our waking hours, all the good which we have desired will come to us very quickly. But people have trouble reaching that stage because they have trouble even letting go of their worrisome thoughts in the first place.
You talk a lot about letting go of negative feelings and thoughts, like feelings of fear and worry in all of your books. Can someone manifest without letting go of these negative thoughts?
I suppose you're asking whether a person can manifest while continuing to hold on to his or her fears and worries?
Yes. Are there cases where individuals who are constantly worried have successfully manifested big things?
I was once that person. I used to be a chronic worrier who worried so much that I didn't even know it. I actually thought that the sick in the gut feeling, which I always walked around with, was normal. I actually came to associate that feeling with myself and with the truth of my being. When you operate at that level of consciousness, it becomes very difficult for you to create long lasting results in your life. You may have small successes here and there. For example, the money or the things you want may come sporadically. But soon after, you'll find that there is another negative or undesired situation which you have to deal with. In other words, life is a struggle living this way. You do not feel totally free because you are constantly bogged down by the negative power of your negative thoughts. To answer your question, yes, it is indeed possible for individuals who chronically worry to manifest small things here and there, but they wouldn't be happy and it wouldn't be lasting. Their negative thoughts will create far too many unwanted manifestations than wanted manifestations which they have to deal with. There is no exception or work around these universal laws. If you wish to receive your highest good, then you must, with no exceptions, let go of all your negative worries and fear thoughts. Even letting them go for a short while, for one moment, is enough to create an opening through which the universe works its magic. In fact, it is how these chronic warriors often create. When they have small openings or pockets of time when they are not worrying, that is when they create. But when they are worrying, they are creating negatively. There is no exception to this rule.
So, the only permanent, lasting solution is for someone to let go of all this fear and worry thoughts completely?
That's the only way to do it. The interesting thing is that it does not matter how you do it. It does not matter how you let go of your negative thoughts. You can rationalize through them and drop them, which is what I have often done. For example, you can start to see the illogicality in holding on to those fear thoughts and then let them go. It's one way to do it. The second way is through distraction, by distracting yourself. This means that you immerse yourself in some fun activity, for example, watching funny movies, until you're having so much fun and forget all about your worries. That works too. It does not matter how you rid yourself of these fear thoughts. All that matters is that you do it and do it often.
What happens after a person has successfully let go of all or most of his worry thoughts? What does he have to do next? I'm asking this question because a lot of our readers will be reading this and be thinking, it can't be this simple. I have to do something.
I am glad you brought this up because it is the biggest fallacy. There is nothing you have to quote unquote do. There are no outer directed physical actions you have to take for your manifestations to happen. The universe makes all of it happen without your active intervention. All the work that a person has to do is on the inside. The journey that you have to take for any manifestation to become a reality in your life is an inner journey and not an outer one. This means that when you successfully get to a stage of releasing most of your fear thoughts and worries, when you walk around feeling completely light and joyous, things start happening for you spontaneously, by their own accord, as if by magic.
This is the part where so many people have trouble grasping. What do you mean by things happening spontaneously like magic?
I love the verse in the Tao Te Ching which reads, "The great master that is the Tao does nothing and leaves nothing undone." I use this verse as the ending of one of my books, the 95.5 Code, because it fits in so well with the message I was trying to bring across. What Lao Tzu was saying is that the great spiritual master, someone who has mastered his own inner state, truly does not need to do anything at all. No outer actions are necessary. Everything happens spontaneously on its own accord, with very little intervention needed on his part. In other words, something will be there when you get there. I am sure all of us can think of at least a few instances in our lives where this has happened for us.
That still sounds a bit nebulous to me. Can you give a few concrete examples?
Sure, we are talking about the realm of the mysterious here, and some of these things may sound really esoteric. But once you really understand how the universe works, there's absolutely no mystery. This is how things should be working and how things should have always worked if we were operating from a clear inner state. One way this principle has realized itself for me is when I make an appointment with someone, let's say a business associate or a friend, and then have something else crop up for me later on. What has often happened is that instead of me having to go through the trouble of canceling the appointment, the other party actually calls me up and cancels it first. Or he calls me up to change the timing so I can make it for both of my appointments. All this happens spontaneously with no intervention on my part. All I do is hold an intention that I need to cancel the appointment or move it to another time. And it is done. Another example is when pieces of information I need somehow find their way to me. I do so once again by holding a very light intention and then letting it go from my awareness altogether. This has happened to me so many times that I have lost count. I once read that Kenny G could blow the same note continuously on his saxophone for 45 minutes while using a technique called circular breathing. I was curious to know how he did it. A few weeks later, I chanced upon a video online with him demonstrating exactly how the technique worked. When I saw the video, I had that instant sense of recognition which I talk about in Allowing Divine Intervention, in which I knew the universe was responding to my desire for more information. Information has also come to me through books, websites, and even prompts to check out certain book titles. I often emphasize that all of us can receive these nudges from the universe, but we first have to get clear of our negative feelings and worries first.
Can everyone receive guidance from the universe about anything?
This is why it's so exciting. We don't have to figure things out on our own. By this, I mean we are never alone. Help is always available to us at any point in time. Once you drop your negative feelings and emotions, you start perceiving through the eyes of the universe. The universe is infinite intelligence. It holds the answers to everything which you need to know. If you need a book, a contact, a person, a key piece of information, it will be shown to you and brought into your life.
What about direct knowing? Having a piece of information come to you directly, not through external means?
It has happened to me too. You see, the universe always chooses the most harmonious and straightforward way to deliver something to you. It wants to make sure that you are receptive of that information. Therefore, if you are currently at a stage where you do not believe that telepathy or direct knowing is possible, then the universe will not use that route to reach you because it will not be able to establish any contact there. It always uses whatever feels the most natural to you. In the early days of my spiritual journey, I often received external help. Information that I needed for the next step came to me in the form of books, my favorite because I do love reading, and they came in form of websites, meeting certain people, and going to certain places. These are all external forms of guidance that the law of attraction has lined up for us as a result of our desires. Our desires and energy contained within those desires line up all these external people, circumstances, and events for us. At that time, I did not believe it was possible to spontaneously receive information and inspiration from the universe, so I did not receive any of those. But gradually, as I began to soften my focus, as I began to immerse myself deeper into all this work, I began to realize that it is indeed possible to receive inner guidance. This is what spiritual masters mean when they talk about direct knowing. This is knowledge not gleaned from external sources or books, but from knowledge which arises spontaneously in our consciousness. You may have read that we are all part of the same universal mind. We are all playing in the same quantum field of possibilities and have the ability to tap into the infinite intelligence of this quantum field. It's like we are all tapped into this giant spiritual internet where the answers can come to us. I have often received spontaneous ideas and insights while driving or in the shower. I sometimes receive them throughout the day as hunches to do something. Many people receive them too. One issue is that most people dismiss them as just their imagination. They do not realize that sometimes all this information comes from the universe itself. This information comes from a higher part of yourself. If you are open to having such experiences, that such experiences will find you. But it will be nothing weird or scary because the universe does not give you more than what you are ready for. Some people feel this as a strong inner impulse to do something or to make a particular decision. This is also a form of inner direct knowing that is not dependent on any external circumstances or evidence.
Let me frame this in terms of manifestations. Suppose you have asked for something. Will the universe prompt you on ways to get it?
Remember that the universe has infinite ways and means to deliver something to you. Space time boundaries do not exist for the universe. It can orchestrate things in an infinite number of ways to bring your good to you. If one door is closed, it will try another, then another. The story which I tell in my book, The Magic Feeling, illustrates this principle very well. What the universe does is to find the most harmonious and straightforward path to you. It knows what this path is, while we do not. So if there is a way to directly and literally drop something into your lap, it will do so. I have experienced this, and I'm sure some of our readers have too. When someone just comes up to you and gives you what you asked for. You may need a computer for your next project, and someone just offers you one, and so on. You may need a particular book, and there it is in the next bookstore you walk into. Then there are times when you need to do your part. For example, money comes to you to buy the computer, and your next step is to go out there and buy it. In other words, the universe needs you to complete part of the equation through your physical actions. But you need not ever worry about what physical action you will need to take, because if physical action is required, it will seem like the most natural thing in the world for you to do. There will be no need for you to second guess yourself. The impulse from within will be so clear and strong that you will know instantly that the sum of money is for you to go and buy the computer. So broadly, there are two cases. One in which what you have asked for comes into your physical experience directly, and the other in which you have to do something to fulfill your part of the equation. The key here is not to get ahead of yourself and try to figure out what is your part. Don't take action needlessly. If there is action that needs to be taken, it will be shown very clearly to you. You will feel it as a strong, clear, unmistakable impulse to act from within. Till then, hold your horses. What I do today is to literally sit on my desires and work on myself until the impulses or nudges come. I don't act unless I receive a strong and pure, feel good feeling about something. Chapter 5: Creating a Manifestation Portal with Your Mind.
This is amazing. I feel like I understand the manifestation process so much more now. What if I receive no impulse? What if I have wanted something for the longest time and still the universe does not give me signs of what to do? What should I do?
This is where most people trip themselves up. They start to use their logical reasoning minds to figure out what they can possibly do to get what they want. They start listing out ways and means through which they can achieve what they want. This is really an ill of our action oriented culture, and sadly, a practice which some self help authors advocate, listing down all the ways which something can come to you. When you do something like this, you are getting way ahead of yourself. What happens is that you are trying to generate possibilities using your reasoning rational mind, and the reasoning mind always defaults to what it knows. So, all the ways that you come up with using an exercise like this, no matter how crazy they may sound, are actually rooted in your current level of consciousness and possibilities. In fact, try it for yourself. Try to list out as many ways as possible on how a certain desired object will come to you. I have found over time that it is impossible to list something that is beyond our current accepted realm of possibilities.
In other words, we are merely coming up with ways based on our current viewpoint.
That is correct. And it is succinctly summed up in this quote by Einstein, which I have also quoted before. The problems of our generation cannot be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it. If you approach manifestation as solving the problem of how do I get the thing I want, then you cannot solve the problem by continuing to work on it at the same level of lackful and limited consciousness. Very often, when people list out all the rational ways in which something can come to them, or all the possible actions which they can take, they are actually doing so from the same level of consciousness that resulted in the asking. They're focused more on the lack of the desired item rather than the manifestation of the desired item.
If I'm not supposed to figure out how something will come to me, what should I do?
If you have asked for something for the longest time and it has not manifested in your experience, ease off a little. This is a point we keep coming back to: the importance of taking a light touch. By taking a light touch, I mean not thinking so much about your desires. I suggested this exercise in my book, Banned Manifestation Secrets, in which I encourage readers to imagine how it will be like if something they desired has already manifested for them. Suppose that you want a new car, and somehow this new car came into your experience. You own the car now. It is in your physical reality now. How would you then think and act? Would you keep thinking about the car and wishing for the car? Would you continually repeat affirmations or set intentions about the car?
Absolutely not. I already have the car. I would drive it and enjoy it, admire it every day if possible.
Exactly. And this is why most people trip themselves up. They think they are conjuring up the feelings of having the desired object right now, when in fact they are conjuring up the exact opposite feelings. They are engaged in actions and conjuring up the feelings of not having the item now. If I had the item right now, I would not even feel the need to think about it. It would be right there in my physical experience. I would not think about how to get it or how it will come to me. I would not even worry about it. There's nothing to worry about. It is done. I would be happy, peaceful, and at one with everything.
This such a paradigm shift. But I know some readers will be thinking, but I still want my stuff. You mean I'm not supposed to think about it?
You have hit the nail on the head. This is what I call the manifestation paradox. If you can master the manifestation paradox on the inside, you will be a very successful and effortless manifester. The effectiveness and speed of your manifestations is in direct proportion to how well you master this whole manifestation paradox.
And what is the manifestation paradox?
It is the paradox of wanting or desiring something and yet still acting and feeling that you don't desire it at all. There is a balance to be had in the middle here. On one end, we have feelings of extreme wanting and desire, but on the other end of the scale, we have feelings of not wanting and not desiring. The manifestation paradox dictates that when you want something to manifest in your life, your inner state must lie somewhere in the middle. That is the most conducive and magnetic state for your manifestations. When you reach that state, everything happens for you spontaneously.
Can you explain to the readers step by step how to reach the stage? Is it even possible to do so?
Absolutely. Countless of my readers have done so. It is something you do on the inside. I have often written that manifestation is not some grandiose exercise that you do on the outside. You are not required to move mountains or to take massive action. Manifestation is all about fine tuning your own inner state on the inside to be conducive to receive what you are asking for. Let me explain this paradox in greater detail. The first level of consciousness is when you want something very badly and you keep asking for it. That's when the lack of something is so apparent to you that you keep asking for it. You keep worrying and wondering how it will come to you. You keep wondering whether all of these techniques work and try to figure out how manifestations can appear in your life. The inner state of such an individual will be very unconducive for manifestations as the universe is picking up on the sum total of all of our feelings and emotions. Guess what inner state the universe is picking up on in this individual? One of extreme lack and desperation. And therefore, more and more lack and desperation is brought to the individual through the perpetuation of his stuck states. Now, suppose an individual manages to break through by reading these books. This is the second stage where many of my readers are at. They now understand the importance of letting go of their worry and fear thoughts. They understand how all of these thoughts can interfere with their manifestations. They understand all of this information at an intellectual level, but the manifestation paradox still exists because they cannot find a way to live this information. They understand it logically, and most will agree that it makes sense, but they just can't find a way to incorporate it at the level of their being. Now, the third stage is the real breakthrough. The breakthrough comes when they finally realize that they must strike a balance and take a light touch. They must desire and ask for something, and yet at the same time, be in a position to receive it. They are in a position to receive something they ask for only if they do not care for whether it manifests in their life or not. This is the feeling we are going for. And this is the part which trips so many people up because they are always asking the question, if I do not desire it, how will it come to me?
So, what you are saying here is that we have a desire, then let it go completely from our consciousness.
That's right. We either let it go completely from our consciousness or immerse ourselves in the it is done feeling. I talk about this feeling in detail in the book of the same name. The it is done feeling is actually very similar to the feeling I talked about earlier. It is the feeling you have when you actually own the new car or when the new car is on its way. You sometimes have to be creative and start playing little games with yourself. This is also something I learned from Abraham Hicks. You must start playing games with yourself by changing the stories you tell. So, for example, instead of saying, my new car is here, I am driving it, which is obviously not true, you can say, my new car is on its way to me now. It is inevitable. When you make the second statement, you are not immediately contradicting your current reality, and therefore it is easier for most people to accept. Many people trip themselves up once again by forcefully insisting that I am now driving my new car when they are actually driving their old car. They are arguing with reality, which only solidifies their lack. Because when you utter the first statement, you immediately notice that your physical reality is something else. And therefore, you experience this deep sense of dissonance. This deep sense of dissonance within is what the universe also picks up on.
This is a very powerful piece of the manifestation puzzle. Am I right to say that we can create whatever reality we want through the creative use of these statements?
That is absolutely correct. You see, although I may call it playing games with myself, I'm really not playing games. This is no trivial matter. Many people often tell me, Richard, I have no time for these mind games. I want to know the exact steps in which I can have that new car manifest for me right now. And I tell them, if you're not willing to use your imagination to play these games, then you're not going to create a new reality for yourself because you will forever remain fixated on your old reality. What really happens when we play the game anyway? Have you noticed how you felt when playing a make believe game where you really allowed yourself to be immersed in an imaginary world?
I felt like time was passing very quickly and everything in the game became real for the players. It was almost like being in a flow state. Everything was so enjoyable and real.
That's exactly it. When we say we are playing a game with make believe rules, we are immersing ourselves into a totally new alternate universe. We are temporarily suspending our beliefs and rules about how the real world functions and replacing those set of rules and assumptions with those from our make believe world. Suddenly, everything becomes so real for us. Then we come out of the game and tell ourselves, oh, that's only a game, and everything reverts back to our ordinary reality. Games are powerful manifestation tools if we use them in the correct way. You may think that you are playing a silly imagination game with yourself, when in fact, you are directing your energies in a very powerful way. As we have discussed earlier, your thoughts have physical equivalency, which means that all of those thoughts are actually doing something out there right now. By being willing to play the it's on its way game, you are blurring the line between your current reality and the more desired reality. You are creating some sort of a transition portal between the two worlds. Without deliberately creating this transition or bridge for yourself, many people will find it difficult to step directly into their new reality without contradicting themselves. They're stacking the deck against themselves without even knowing it.
I love the energy of our discussion and where this is going. Guide us through how to play the "it is on its way" game.
Games are a way for us to soften our focus on current reality and to ease ourselves gently into a more desired reality. Using the earlier example, let's suppose that you want to manifest a new car. You have done all the inner work necessary, like letting go of your fear and worry thoughts about how it will come to you. You are also immersing yourself in the "it is done" feeling. What most people would do at this stage is to affirm, "I am driving a brand new car." As mentioned earlier, this immediately sets up strong contradictions within your vibrations. So, what you want to do is to ease into the vibrations of a new car gently. You want to make the transition into your new desired state gently. So, what you can say is, "I am still driving my current car, and as I drive it, I know that my new car is on its way to me. I can feel it coming to me." Can you feel how much of a difference that makes in your inner state? You become less resistant and even more receptive to any manifestations that can come your way. Chapter 6: How to Desire Nothing.
I love this suggestion. So, whenever I see something undesired, instead of fighting against it, I can affirm that its desired version is on its way to me.
That is correct. When you affirm that whatever you want is on its way to you, and you certainly have all the technical knowledge to back it up based on all the information you have read in this book, you are softening your resistance. You are not focused as much on the lack of something. Instead, you are focused on the presence of the desired object in your life. That is a very powerful place to be in.
Some readers, especially those who read lots of self help books, may be worried that when they say something is on its way to them, it will always be on its way. They are worried that the universe will take it literally.
That is one of the biggest myths and misconceptions in manifestations. And it is going back to one of the fundamental points I've made. The universe does not pick up on your physical words. The universe picks up on the sum total of your feelings and emotions. Therefore, if saying that something is on its way to you allows you to soften your resistance and gradually ease into a more desired reality, if saying that something is on its way allows you to feel better, then it actually makes the things you want come faster. Those who believe that the universe takes them literally have not fully mastered the art of manifestations. They are still caught up at the level of words. These are also the individuals who are likely to be using lots of forceful affirmations like, "I now blank." I have nothing against strongly worded affirmations, but in using them, one must be mindful. You must be careful to ask yourself how you feel on the inside as you use those affirmations. It makes all the difference. Many readers of self help material suffer from affirmatitis. They have affirmations everywhere in every room of their house. And I say this only half jokingly because I used to be one of them. At one point in my spiritual journey, I had over 30 small colored post it strips pasted all around the edge of my computer monitors, 30 of them in different colors. Each one of them contained a different affirmation or spiritual nugget, which I read from some self help book. I was hoping that my subconscious would absorb the messages from those notes as I was doing my work.
Did it work?
If it worked, I was too bogged down to see the effects. Once again, what is the inner state of an individual who sees the need to paste these affirmations all over the place? He is likely to be quite worried and desperate to make things work, like me back then. So, his inner state is already not conducive for any changes to occur. It may be true that the subconscious can pick up on all these messages that are pasted all over, but do not forget that the subconscious is also brewing in its own worrisome thoughts all day long. The negative effects of these worrisome thoughts will cancel everything out. There was one additional disadvantage. Each time I consciously noticed or read those affirmations, I would immediately be reminded of the fact that things were not the way I wanted them to be. And that led to more internal disharmony. So it is really like a double whammy here. Looking at those affirmations reminded me more of my unwanted reality.
What did you do in the end?
I think one of the best decisions I ever made was to throw away all of those affirmations and post it notes I had stuck all over the place. I got rid of those 30 post it notes around my computer monitor and in various places. Once I did that, I felt free for the first time in my life. It was like I had given up all expectations of any outcome. Now, most people will see it as a step backwards. They are unwilling to do so because they think they are removing these powerful goals to move towards. But I can assure you that the opposite happens.
Therefore, someone should not be worried that by removing the affirmations or positive statements from our site, that our manifestations will not happen.
Again, someone who worries about that is barking up the wrong tree. Your manifestations depend on your inner state and not upon whether you are putting up all these stickers or reminders around the house. Give up any need to remind yourself or to send any signals to the universe. The universe picked up on your intentions the first time you held them. This means that the first time you desired something on the inside, the universe has already picked that up very clearly. We always have a divine connection to the universe. Subsequently, any of these external acts are for our own reference only. I like to say that they're for our own reminder only. Some people do it because it makes them feel good. They have a book of things that they want, and flipping through it pleases them because they love to look at all the beautiful aspects of those items. That is a productive activity. Then, on the other hand, there are individuals who keep such a book as some sort of a manifestation tool. They hope that reading the book repeatedly will reinforce it into their subconscious, which will in turn attract those items into their lives. Same action, but very different inner states. That's why the former results in fast manifestations, but the latter results in more waiting and disappointments. This goes back to a point which we have discussed earlier. If someone is trying too hard, the best gift to oneself is to free yourself of all expectations. That means removing all these reminders from your external environment that remind you of the absence of your desires.
This is very powerful stuff. We are really moving into the crux of the discussion here. Is that why you have subtitled this book, How to Desire Nothing and Manifest Everything?
Yes, the state of desiring nothing is a very powerful state. It is a profound title, so I would like to take all of our readers through the thought process here. First, when we talk about desiring nothing, we're not really talking about having no desires. It is impossible to have no desires. Certain religions, and I believe it is a matter of interpretation, have turned desire into some sort of a bad thing, which is frowned upon. They say that it is bad to have desires, and so the whole point of the religion is to eschew desires completely and to give up desires completely. But desires do not have to be physical. They can also be subtle preferences and likings. So your desire can be something as simple as taking a particular route to work over another. Your desire can be something as simple as choosing to eat one food over another, or choosing to give to one charity over another. I see desires as the choices we make and the preferences we have in life. Life is a series of choices, which means it is essentially a series of desires. To move forward in life, to live fully, we have to make decisions and choices. New preferences emerge from within us, and therefore, new desires emerge from within us. In that sense, we will always have desires as long as we live. The reason why I say that it is a matter of interpretation is because many modern interpretations have portrayed desire as something bad. It is not the desires themselves that are bad. As you can see, I can have a desire for constructive change. I can have a positive desire to write these series of books. I can have a desire to make these teachings available to everyone around the world. All these are desires that move us forward. Therefore, the desires themselves are not bad. It is our attachment to the outcomes of those desires that is often counterproductive. I believe this is what the spiritual masters were getting at: our strong attachment to the outcomes of those desires. This means that after having a desire, you want it to turn up or end up in a certain way. You want it to be fulfilled in a certain way for you. Our stubborn attachment to these desires causes the problem. Now, if you look at this issue closely, it actually resembles the manifestation paradox we talked about earlier. The manifestation paradox is about wanting something and yet not wanting it. This is similar. It is about desiring something and yet not desiring it. So, in essence, the ancient spiritual masters were really saying the same things as what we are saying today. They often say, let go of any attachments to the outcome. They were, in essence, referring to the manifestation paradox. Here's how to apply all of this in your daily life. First, I would see desires as healthy and normal. If you subscribe to a religious framework that sees such desires as unhealthy, as something not spiritual, then you cannot possibly be an effective manifester because you have a roadblock in your own thinking. So give up all these unresourceful beliefs if you do have them. Second, I would accept my desires and let myself have them. If I have a preference, intention, or desire for something, and if it is really aligned with my highest good, if I feel good about it, I would set an intention for it. That is about as far as I would go. That's why I always encourage using a light touch that is neither too forceful nor desperate. Use a light touch. Set an intention by saying, I would like a blank, or I prefer blank, and let it go. You don't have to set intentions at the level of words. You can always set them through your own good feelings about something. Third, after I have set my intentions, I let them go. That is really what I mean in the subtitle of this book, How to Desire Nothing and Manifest Everything. When I set my intentions and let it go, I have set powerful universal energies in motion, yet I desire nothing to be different from that point on. I am at one and at peace with everything. I am peaceful, happy, and fulfilled.
So this means that you do not care about whether your desires get fulfilled or not.
If they get fulfilled, it's all right for me. If they do not get fulfilled, for whatever reason, it is all right for me as well. I am open to the ways and means by which something can come into my life. I do not try to force the outcome or dictate how something should be. I do not worry or concern myself with when and whether it will come into my life, because I know that it will. That is the second part of the subtitle, the manifest everything part. When you adopt this inner state and mindset, everything you can possibly want and more manifests into your life. Chapter 7, and manifest everything.
This is where I get curious. When you say manifest everything, is it really possible to manifest everything in your life? Has everything you have asked for manifested in your life?
This is a wonderful question, and I can imagine many readers wanting to know the answer. One thing you'll realize as you immerse yourself in these spiritual teachings is that we are never done. We are never complete, as Abraham Hicks puts it. This means that we never get to an eventual state when we say, okay, it is done. There is nothing I have to do in my life anymore. We will never get to that stage because we are constantly asking, constantly desiring, and new things are constantly added to our experience. When you realize this point, you'll understand why your life consists of things that are manifested and also things that are not yet manifested. If you can follow my reasoning here and understand these teachings on a deep level, you will accept this constant evolution process as natural. There will always be things manifested and things in the process of manifestation or coming into form into your life. So there are certainly things in my life right now, things which I have just asked for recently, for example, that are still in the process of becoming. This is a very powerful piece of the puzzle. Once you make peace with this fact that there will always be things in process, you would have cleared up a lot of these contradictory vibrations. Now, to answer the second part of your question, whether all the things I have asked for have manifested. So, barring the things I asked for recently that are still in the process of becoming, I can unequivocally state that everything which I have previously asked for has come into being in my life. Everything I have asked for has manifested. Every single one of them.
Wow, that's amazing. Can everyone do this? I don't want readers to think, oh, you are Richard Dotz. That's why you could do it.
This is exactly the reason why I have treaded very carefully while writing all these books as it relates to my own personal struggle with this material. Religious masters over the ages have repeatedly said, whatever I can do, you can do too. They said this not out of a sense of humility, but because it is the truth. We are all made of the same mind stuff. We all have the same innate abilities. We all have the same capacity for greatness. Anyone who has achieved success or greatness in any field has always been the first to admit that whatever they have done, anyone else can do too. They never say, oh, this success is only reserved for me, only I can do it. In fact, you should stay away from teachers who makes these claims. The issue is that people look at such an individual and they start picking out ways in which they are different from that person. For example, when they look at a great spiritual teacher like Jesus, they'll start picking out differences, perceived or real, between themselves and Jesus. Or they look at a particular spiritual teacher and they will say, oh, it's easy for her to do it because she came into contact with the right people, or she had the right support, or education, or background, or whatever it is. This mentality has become so pervasive that it can be a stumbling block in all of your manifestations. Let me explain through a personal story. In my early days of learning all of this material, I would read books written by the great self help authors. For each one of these books, I would be able to come up with a list of reasons why I couldn't be as successful as the author based on some characteristics I picked up about the author. For example, with Tony Robbins, I might say, oh, he achieved success through his infomercials. I will never be able to have my own infomercials, hence, I will not be as successful as him. Or an author might have achieved success through real estate. I will never have the capital to invest in real estate, so I cannot use his methods. Do you see how self limiting this form of thinking is? This form of thinking is so damaging and destructive that it can really sabotage your chances for success before you even start out. When I fell into this trap, I was really making excuses for myself and imposing limitations on myself. All limitations are just that, self imposed. I was carried away by the outer physical appearances of a person. The saying, judge not by appearances but by right judgment, is so applicable here. Therefore, when I started writing these series of books, I wanted to free my readers from this trap. I didn't want my readers to make the same mistake as me. I don't want readers to overthink that just because I have a doctoral degree or just because I come from a certain place or background, that I have some sort of advantage over them which they do not have. The reverse is true as well. In my early days, I would frequently check out the biography of authors to make sure that they were credible or qualified to teach their material. But how would I know? As a result, I missed out on some very wonderful books. I was judging those authors and deciding which books I should read based on my own limited perceptions about the field. I missed out on a whole treasure trove of books with wonderful content. Fortunately, when I realized that I was imposing my own limited perspective on others, I started broadening my scope, and as a result, achieved breakthroughs in my own understanding. So, to answer your question in a nutshell, everyone can do this. As long as you take the time and effort necessary to do the inner work, then all your manifestations will come true for you as they have come true for me. The only thing you cannot control is how and when they appear in your life. That is up for the universe to decide.
How does it feel to have all of your manifestations come true for you?
I feel an immense sense of gratitude and appreciation for these universal laws. When I realize that everything I have asked for has manifested in my life with the rest coming into form, I truly realize how powerful all these universal laws are. It affirms my understanding at a very deep level. Some things which you have asked for may not come in exactly the form which you dictate, which I think is the beauty of the whole process. The universe delivers whatever you want in the highest and most harmonious ways possible. Now, you may think that what you want is best achieved through one way, where in fact the universe has higher and better plans for you. That's why you must constantly be willing to give up control, to give up your insistence that something will come through a particular way. I have so many examples I can give about this. For example, in the past, I always had problems with procrastination. I thought that the way to solve it was for myself to cultivate better self discipline. Most people would therefore ask for better self discipline and self control. They would ask for this inherent quality to be developed within them and probably pray that God strengthens this quality in them. This is similar to praying for inner strength, which many people often do.
How did it turn out in that instance?
What actually happened was that I came across a book that talked about how to handle procrastination. It talked about why we procrastinated and the psychological reasons behind it. After reading that book, I dropped this lifelong habit and it has never returned. Dropping it was like the easiest thing to do in the world for me. There was no strain or struggle. The universe delivered just exactly what I needed. The book became the manifestation for me. What I thought would come through one way came through another, more beautiful and effortless way. I have so many other examples of this in my own life.
I love this story. Tell us another one.
Another story relates to my financial goals. I had always wanted to be financially independent early in life. As I was just starting out on my journey, I drew up a roadmap of how it could happen through a series of companies, with each company generating a certain income and having a certain number of employees. That's why in my early days, I often visualized that I was in this bustling office as some sort of a hotshot entrepreneur with all these employees working for me. The office would be in an entrepreneurial hotbed like Silicon Valley or something, and I would come up with the next breakthrough idea that would impact the world. What actually happened was that I became an entrepreneur, a teacher, and a business owner, but not in the ways I imagined. All of these provide me with the same financial freedom that I want, but in a vastly different way from what I imagined. I do not have a huge staff working for me. I am not in Silicon Valley. I did not invent the next Facebook. The path that I envisioned was replaced by one that was exactly suited to my preferences and temperaments. You can imagine that had I insisted on going the Facebook route, I would still be holding myself apart from my highest good.
A lot of people see others achieve success in a particular way and immediately decide that it's going to be the route for them as well.
Only you can decide if it is going to be the right route for you. You decide by the way you truly feel on the inside. Some people see others getting rich by developing that next killer app, so they say, okay, that's what I'm going to do too. I think that would be too conditional. That would be taking action before you are lined up on the inside. People who adopt this mindset say, okay, I know there is money to be made from developing software, or insert any other avenue here. What software should I develop? That's taking the outside in approach. That is a completely reverse approach to what we have been talking about here. The inside out approach would be to feel a strong inner nudge and compulsion to develop a particular piece of software. Everything feels right to you. There's no inner nagging feeling, no discord, and not a single bit of resistance. Developing that software feels like the most natural thing in the world for you. Not because you want to get rich doing it, but because it feels so good. That's when you should go out there and do it.
I realize what you have described above sounds exactly like what many of the great entrepreneurs have described.
All of the greatest entrepreneurs and rainmakers throughout history have used these manifestation laws and principles knowingly or unknowingly. You can read the biographies of any of the great entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, for example, and recognize the common threads that run through their experiences. In the early days, Steve Jobs was not concerned about money. He was not obsessed about making money. You can pick up on the passion that comes through in his writings and in his speeches. He was guided and inspired to make a better computer. He did it with the genuine intention to change the world. As a result, he was richly rewarded. The rich financial results are a consequence of following your inner nudges and passion.
I love how you link these spiritual laws back to something so high tech like computers.
Many people think that these spiritual laws are esoteric and that they would not apply in the modern world. What I have attempted to show through all my books and writings is that these spiritual laws are timeless and can be applied just as well in modern society. In fact, with the technological advancements and resources that are at our disposal today, we can do even greater things once we align ourselves with these universal teachings. If you read the biographies of successful people, each and every one of them will tell you that they had a hunch or some sort of an impulse and they acted on it in spite of the external evidence or external resistance that they encountered. They were all acting on divine inspiration, every single one of them. Divine inspiration is not something that comes to a select few. This is the point I make in my book, Allowing Divine Intervention. Neither does divine inspiration have to be something earth shaking like ideas on how to build the next Apple computer. It can be as simple as a way to drop procrastination in your life, to be happier, to be more present and more fulfilled. It can be as small and simple as that. And if you'll just act on one divine inspiration, followed by the next one and the next one, you will be living from your state of highest goodness, and everything will turn out better than you can ever plan it to be. The act of planning by itself puts a cap on what can possibly materialize in your reality. But when you follow the divine plan, you are on your way to greatness. The path will be shown to you. Chapter 8: The Three-Stage Manifestation Process.
As I hear you speak these words, I feel a sudden rush of excitement all over my body. It's like a sudden rush of inspiration, of possibilities.
That is the feeling of alignment, of being aligned with your highest good and having very little resistance in the moment. Most people dismiss feelings like this when they feel them throughout the day. They think they are just feeling good and there's nothing special in the moment. But there is something special in that moment. Something more is happening than what meets the eye. When you feel a sudden sense of inspiration or exhilaration, you are energetically moved to a more powerful and attractive place. And if you allow yourself to remain in this inspired state for a longer time, then more and more powerful and attractive thoughts will come to you. Thoughts and impulses that will move you towards your highest good. Someone who feels a sudden rush of inspiration or possibilities is feeling very little resistance in that very same moment.
What I have learned from reading your books is that these good feelings are something special. They point to something greater.
That's right. These good feelings are not just mere sensations which we feel under our skin and all over our body. These good feelings are what I call precursors to our manifestations. They let us know if we are on the right track. The problem is that most people do not pay attention to them because we are so focused on the external evidence and signs. We are too busy looking at outer physical reality for signs of our manifestations that we miss these inner good feelings entirely. When you pay more attention to the way you feel on the inside, you will find that the good feelings can be very exquisite. If you'll keep your focus entirely on the inside for most of the time, you'll start to recognize that you have a wonderful inner state. You will have many times throughout the day where you feel a general sense of flow and momentum, as if you are being propelled by universal energy. Those are the times when you know you are aligned with universal forces and moving powerfully along in the direction of what you want. Then there are the times when you feel awful, like you are working so hard against the grain and just wearing yourself out. Those are the signs to let you know that you are trying too hard or that you are focused on something that puts you at odds with these universal forces. You can learn a lot about the manifestation process just by turning your awareness inwards. There is value in both the good and bad feelings. The bad feelings are letting you know that your focus is misplaced.
Take us through a typical manifestation process. When should someone focus on the outside and when should he focus on the inside or his inner state? Or should he focus on both at the same time?
Manifestation typically starts with an outward focus. In other words, we notice something that is undesired on the outside and desire for that condition to be changed. Or we notice something that is pleasing to us on the outside and wish for something similar or more of it to come into our lives. So, manifestation always starts with an outward focus, as adopting that focus allows you to clarify and choose what you want. Think of it as going to your favorite store with a wonderful array of items and choosing what you like from the shelves. For me, I love to go to a big electronics store to check out all the items on display. There are gadgets that I like and things on display that I do not particularly care for. However, the mix is what makes it all so exciting. I never know what I will find. I pick and focus my attention only on the things that I like and let the other products just fade into the background. I accept them as part of the choosing process. I do not start demanding that the store remove all the items I do not like. This is an analogy that has also been used by Abraham Hicks to illustrate that manifestation is about placing your attention on and choosing what you like from the mix, rather than placing your attention on and feeling bad about all the things that you do not like. Just let what you do not like gently fade into the background without trying to change or argue against any of it. Once you have clearly identified what you want on the outside, it's now time to gently turn your focus inwards and focus entirely on your inner state. You set your intentions by turning inwards and not outwards. You maintain those good feelings of your desire already fulfilled right now on the inside. The key to effective manifestations is to immerse yourself in this inner state for as long as possible until an outer manifestation occurs. Once an outer manifestation occurs, you can then turn your attention back again to the outside to enjoy the fruits of your manifestation. If you have done the inner work necessary, you should find the inner world to be just as enjoyable and pleasurable as the outer physical world. Using the electronics store analogy, let's suppose that I set my sights on a new Mac computer. It becomes the object of my desire that I want to bring into my life. What does one usually do when they see something they like at the store? They focus on all the positive aspects of it. They allow themselves to thoroughly enjoy the process of checking out all its functions and features. They feel the joy of learning about the product and using it. This whole process is no different from your other manifestations in the real world. Once you have identified the thing you like, you immerse yourself in all the positive aspects of it. You think about its good points often and savor it. You imagine yourself using it and feeling so good from the experience. In other words, there should be no difference between how you feel on the inside when something is not yet manifest and when it is manifest. This is the whole secret right here. I would really like to emphasize this last point and really drive it home as it is the key. When you get to a point where you feel so good about your unmanifest desires, such that manifestation would make you feel no different, you are on the brink of a physical manifestation.
This is such a crucial point in our discussion that I want to make sure all our readers get it. When I get to a point where I feel so good about something that is not yet manifest in my life, such that its manifestations would make me feel not much different, that is the point when the manifestation is about to occur.
That is the point where the physical manifestation is about to occur. In fact, I would encourage all readers to try and apply this in their own lives. Pick something which you want to manifest and try out the three-stage process that I talk about. First, focus on the outside to decide what you want to manifest. Second, turn that focus inwards and just immerse yourself in the good feelings of that manifestation. Really do so until you would feel no different should a physical manifestation occur. That is when a physical manifestation should really happen for you every single time. When it happens, you can then turn your focus back to outer reality to enjoy what you have manifested. And so, this process repeats itself throughout our lives as we bring more and more of our desires through and into physical form.
I have never seen the whole process summarized so succinctly, but I also know what some readers will be thinking. If it's so simple, then why do so many people still struggle with the manifestation process?
I can tell you exactly why so many people out there struggle with the manifestation process. That's because they are unknowingly tripping themselves up at several points in the process described above. I should know because I was one of them. Back when I first started out, I didn't have the guidance of someone who was more experienced than I was in this stuff. I didn't have someone looking over my shoulder and saying, Richard, this is where you are tripping yourself up, and here's how to change it. So, what happened was that I figured a lot of it out by painful trial and error. It took me many tries, probably thousands of tries, before I finally saw the whole process for what it was. The advantage that our readers have in reading this series of books is that you can sidestep all the mistakes which I have made. I point out the pitfalls to you before they occur so you can recognize them and take corrective inner actions if necessary. This is where these series of books are of great value. As you can see, there are three stages in the manifestation process described above. It is outward, to choose what you want, then inward, to manifest what you want, and finally, outward again, to enjoy what has been manifested. Some people trip themselves up at the first stage. They focus outwards, but instead of placing their attention on what they want, they place their attention or allow themselves to be carried away by all the things which they do not want. This is quite a funny example, but let's suppose that I am an Apple fan. I walk into an electronics store that sells both Macs and PCs. A good manifester would only place his attention on his objects of desire, which are the Apple computers and Macs. An ineffective manifester would complain about all the PCs on display and demand that the store only stock up on Macs. he would spend lots of time complaining to the store manager about it and demanding that the store change their inventory and layouts just to accommodate him. But guess what the store manager would say?
I suppose he would say that there are also people interested in PCs.
Exactly. And that's why there is so much choice and diversity in this universe. All of us do not always like the same things or prefer the same experiences. All of us have different choices and preferences, and it contributes to the dynamism and diversity of the world around us. So the world is not going to change just because you only like Macs. The PCs are still going to be there, but an effective manifester places his focus only on things that he likes and ignores the rest. He lets the rest fade into the background through the skillful use of his focus. Many people trip themselves up at the very first stage, which is allowing themselves to be carried away by all the unwanted things in their experience and spending so much energy arguing for why they should not be there. If they would only use that energy to focus on what they wanted, they would multiply the effectiveness of their manifestations many times. Next, many people trip themselves up at the second stage of the process, in which they are supposed to focus their attention exclusively on their inner worlds. What most people do is to jump between their inner and outer worlds. They keep looking to the outside for external evidence of their manifestations, and they get discouraged or worried when they see nothing happening. As I've mentioned, a strong sense of discouragement or worry has the power to wipe out all the positive inner work that you have done previously. So, what actually happens to many individuals is that they take one step forward, but then two steps back and wonder why nothing is happening for them.
While the manifestation process you have described is deceptively simple, there are also many pitfalls in which individuals can fall into.
That's right. And sometimes we can be stuck in one of these pitfalls for years without even knowing it, especially if we do not have the guidance of someone who has gone through the whole process. That was certainly the case for me. I did not even know I was stuck inside one of these pits and making no progress. It was only with a lot of determination that I finally emerged from the other end of the tunnel. Therefore, you have a great advantage here. You are able to learn from my mistakes and avoid them. Chapter 9: The Inner Inquiry Technique.
Let's talk about the second stage of the process now. How long should an individual focus inwards for? How long does that part of the process take?
From my experience, it could be as short as a few minutes to as long as a few months or years. You focus inwards until the physical manifestation occurs. The length of time is not what we should be concerned about, and I'll explain why in a moment. I've had physical manifestations occurring after turning inwards and staying there for just a few minutes, but I have also had manifestations that took days, weeks, or months to physically happen on the outside. Whenever we are concerned with how long our manifestations are going to take, we are also throwing a bit of worry vibrations into the mix. Therefore, give up any worries about how long something is going to take and instead focus on just enjoying the experience. Know that everything you ask for will be there when you get there. The second reason why timing becomes a non issue is because if you really turn inwards and immerse yourself in the good feelings of your intentions, then there should be no difference between how you feel about this unmanifest desire and how you would feel even if it were manifest. As such, the issue of time becomes a moot point. you don't even worry about when it will come because either way, you are feeling good.
I love how you just answered that. It means that when I am so focused on cultivating my inner state, I don't even care about time or whether my physical manifestations occur.
That's exactly right. When you allow yourself to finally reach that inner state of peace and acceptance of the whole process, the whole issue of timing and when will it come just dissolves. You are at such an elevated state of consciousness that you don't even worry about when something will come to you or if it will ever come. Because as far as you are concerned, you are already feeling at one with your unmanifested desire. There is no difference between that unmanifested desire and its manifested version. That is the whole key here. The irony is that when you reach such an exalted state on the inside, the physical manifestations have to happen very quickly on the outside. Everything becomes almost instantaneous. It is impossible for something not to happen. This is perhaps the hardest point for most to understand because it is so counterintuitive. It goes against the grain of everything we have been taught traditionally. All of us have been taught to struggle and work hard for what we want, to strive and really want it so badly until we get it. We have also been erroneously taught that if something is not yet in our lives, it is because we don't want it badly enough. It's because we are not hungry enough for it. But that sentence is often misinterpreted by those on the spiritual path.
I can recall many teachings, primarily from motivational teachers that teach the same thing. They say that if something is not yet in our lives, it is because we don't have a burning desire for it and that we don't want it badly enough.
There is value in all of these teachings, just that certain teachings are often misinterpreted and misconstrued by people who read them. What these motivational teachers are saying, as I've realized after a long time, is that if something is really important to you, you will do everything necessary to ensure that it comes into your life. This teaching, if applied within the current framework, means that you will work on your inner state no matter what it takes. You'll focus exclusively on how you feel on the inside to the exclusion of everything else. You'll not allow yourself to be bogged down by fear or negative thoughts. You'll be persistent in your practice and overcoming your past conditioning. You'll be determined, but notice that all our determination is channeled and focused on letting go of negative and fear thoughts. You are not focused upon outer directed actions to get what we want.
I have never thought about it this way. This puts a whole new light on those teachings.
This really goes back to an earlier point about eliminating and getting rid of any sense of discord which we feel on the inside. Very often, we read about teachings that seem to create a sense of contradiction on the inside. This sense of confusion and contradiction will be picked up on by the universe as well and acted upon. Great value will come to you if you learn how to synthesize these various teachings. I believe that all great teachings ultimately point to one spiritual truth. It is just different ways and paths of getting there. So there is great value if you can learn to evaluate a piece of information and see how it fits into your existing worldview.
You have mentioned that you read an upward of 100 books per year on related subjects. Tell us more about that.
The funny thing is that before I figured out a way to make all of these work, I was also reading many books a year on related subjects. After I have found a way to make all of these work and received my highest good, I am still reading the same number, if not more, books on the subject. In my early days, I always thought there would be a day where I would be done, where I would no longer have to do any reading and have my best life just flow to me. Well, my best life is flowing to me now, but I still find myself doing a lot of reading. The only difference is in my mindset. The mindset and inner state which I adopt is very different now. In my early days, I did all my readings with a sense of desperation and forcefulness. I was literally tearing through the pages of all those books trying to find that one secret or 5 steps that would guarantee all my manifestations. I was trying to find secret techniques and tips that would speed up my manifestations or would allow myself to be a millionaire. I sped through all of those books and came away with very little. I allowed myself to pass on some very great books in the process. Now, it is possible that some of our readers are at this stage. You may be speeding through book after book trying to find the next secret or next technique which you think can help speed up your manifestations while glossing over the harder parts. The harder parts are about working on yourself, about cultivating your inner state, and about having the discipline to focus entirely inwards during the crucial gestation period of your manifestations. That is the hard inner work that most people usually eschew in favor of the easier outer techniques. But until and unless you do the inner work necessary, things are not going to get any better for you. The mindset that I adopt now while reading all these books is very different. I am not pouring through all these books trying to look for that one single secret or right way to do things. I know today that there is no right way to manifest apart from some broad universal principles, and whatever works is what works for you. Each individual is unique. Each of us has our own obstacles and mental roadblocks. Each of us has picked up some resistance along the way. Therefore, the mindset which I adopt while reading all these books and learning from all the great teachers nowadays is one of fine tuning. It is a valuable attitude to adopt. I am not reading because I am doing something wrong which needs to be corrected. I am not reading because I am trying to find the right way to do things. I am reading to fine tune my vibrations, to learn to make minor corrections in the way I feel and in the way I perceive things. I am reading to let go of resistance that I may have unknowingly picked up on. I am reading to slowly move myself into an even better life because there is no limit to how good my life can get. That is why I am reading. You know, if you adopt this second mindset while you read, then things can change for you in an instant. You instantly go from, what am I doing wrong, to, what am I doing right? And how can I make it better? You'll be taking a huge leap, a huge inner journey on the inside that can make all the difference. You'll find yourself enjoying what you read more and savoring what you read more. You'll not find yourself under as much pressure from your own expectations. If only every single person reading this book can say, I am already doing things right. Now I want to find out how to make things even better. They would create huge shifts in their inner states. I know there is value in all teachings. That's why today I do not screen what I read based on the background of the authors or where they come from. I have learned that such self imposed limitations are hardly useful to me because I can be wrong. There is value in learning from everyone. There is value in learning from Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Abraham Hicks, Neville Goddard, as much as there is value in learning from Richard Dotts. The greatest value comes when the person I'm learning from has an experience which mirrors mine very closely. And by learning how he worked around those tricky situations, I can do the same in my own life too. That is the greatest value of all these teachings.
I love how you just expressed yourself, and I felt that wonderful rush of inspiration run through me once again. There are so many books to read out there, so much material. How do you decide what to read at any given moment?
This is a very apt question for this book, and one that is seldom touched upon. I don't think I have ever offered advice on how to choose your reading material and where to learn from. But here's how I do it. In my early days, I just read everything that came my way. If I saw something at the bookstore with some fancy title or written by someone with impressive credentials, I would read it. Once again, do you notice how my ego was dictating what I would read? I was allowing my rational mind to set up screens to decide what I should read. Today, I do it very differently. I rely on my intuition and higher self. I never look at where a message is from. In other words, I don't look at the messenger. You know, some people say they are uncomfortable with channeled material. They don't want to read anything that comes from unknown sources. Who is speaking here? Is it their rational self or their higher self? For me, I have reached the point today, and it has been another valuable lesson, not to place so much emphasis on the source of the material. I like to take the material out for a test drive myself. I like to apply it and try it in my own life and then notice the results in my own life. If it works, if it makes me happier and more fulfilled, if something allows me to live my best life, then why should I care about who wrote it or where it is from? So I no longer care about where the material is from. I no longer judge the credentials of the author, whether he is qualified or unqualified, whether he is physical or non physical. If it works in my own life, it is good enough for me. If he is unqualified to provide such advice in the first place, then there is a high chance that it wouldn't work in my life after trying it. So I only pass judgment only after I have tried it and not before. I don't allow myself to judge anything based on superficial characteristics like how well something is written. Now, the second point is that I always ask my higher self, that's also my intuition, whether it is something that is right for me at this time. There are books and material that are just right for us at certain points in our life. Let me explain. There are books which will help you at a particular stage of your life to make sense of things that are going on. But you'll find yourself moving on to more advanced material as your understanding deepens. When you subsequently pick up that book again, you may find that it has less of an impact than you previously thought. This is why all teachings have value in our lives. My bookshelf is filled with books I read during my earlier days, which I would not read now, but they served me well during my early days. The reverse is also true. There are books that are not appropriate for us at our current level of understanding. They may be too advanced for us. They may not fit into our current understanding. You'll know when you read it. If that's the case, I gently put it down and return to it at some other time. This happened for me as well. When I first picked up the Seth material by Jane Roberts, I had set it down many times. I think I could not finish the book the first few times I read it. Then, one day, I picked up the book and understood everything perfectly. It was as if Seth was speaking to me directly. I was now at a level, at an inner state that was conducive to receiving Seth's message. I subsequently went on to complete the whole series. What this whole experience had taught me is that I should not readily dismiss certain teachings at face value. Each of these teachings have value for me at different stages in my understanding. Nowadays, I look at a book, and if it is right for me, I'll usually feel a strong, clear inner impulse to read it. I can usually feel it straight away, even if the title is not particularly sensational or exciting. Your inner self is picking up on the vibrations of the book as well. This is what every one of us can do. Try it with any book. Have there been books with a sensational title, but you felt something was just not right? True enough, you found it difficult to finish the book, although you forced yourself through it. I'm sure there have been times in your life when you felt drawn to a book for no particular reason. The book seemed to beckon to speak to you. That is when you should read it. Be more discerning, but also bear in mind that while a book may not speak to you now, it may speak to you in the future. I have come into contact with many great books this way because your highest self always knows what you need perfectly at each stage of your life. Trust it. What I do when I enter a big bookstore or library nowadays filled with endless racks of books, or even any place that has all these great material, is to ask myself silently, is there anything for me here? For a short while in my life, I used to do muscle testing to solicit the answer to this question. I no longer do it because I am able to get a direct answer from my higher self now. This is a direct consequence of doing the inner work necessary and letting go of negative thoughts that cloud one's perceptions. Upon asking the question, I am able to get a clear yes or no answer in an instant.
Amazing. How has it worked out?
It has worked out even better than I imagined. When I received a no answer for the first few times, I would be tempted to just look through the shelves to see what I could find. Sometimes the bookstore had so many books, and I just could not believe there was nothing that would appeal to me. So I physically looked through all the books one by one, title by title. And guess what? Whenever my inner self said no, there was nothing on the shelves that would call out or appeal to me. Not a single time. On the other hand, when my inner self said, yes, there is something for you here, I was always able to find that one book to deepen my understanding or to answer some burning question that I had at that point in my life. I trust in the process so much now that if my inner self says no, I have no trouble walking away and just having a coffee. I have saved myself so much time and needless effort with this technique.
This technique is perfect because I know so many of us who are suffering from information overload in this digital age. We feel tempted to read everything we can get our hands on. We are afraid of missing out on important information.
And that's exactly what this technique does, which is to allow you to tune out the material that is not right for you at this stage of your life. It will also lead you to some surprisingly good finds. For example, there were times when I came across a bunch of old books and didn't feel like looking through them. They all looked very worn out, old, and tattered. I was convinced there wouldn't be anything there for me. But my inner self said yes, there is something for you here. And I managed to find a few gems from going through the pile. This is the value of going within and tending to your inner state.
Can this technique you just described work for other situations as well? For example, to find specific pieces of information which we need.
It certainly can. Remember that the universe is always sending us nudges and impulses. The universe would have sent me those nudges even if I had not asked the question. But the thing is that most of us allow our conscious reasoning minds to take over. My first reaction when I saw those pile of old and tattered books was, there's nothing for me here. Let's move on. That was my rational, conscious self speaking based on external, observable evidence. Therefore, to really allow myself to receive the message my higher self was sending, I had to ask the clarifying question. Sometimes you have to use your focus in a pointed way to get the answers you want. Otherwise, your thoughts will just go off in their own directions. Chapter 10, Closing Words.
Thank you. My understanding has improved so much in the short time we have spent together. You have provided many helpful tips and techniques for our readers. As this conversation draws through a close, do you have any advice for our readers before they go off and apply all this in their own lives?
I certainly do. The first is to remind everyone that if I can do it, and if the tens of thousands of readers around the world can do it after reading my words, then you can do it too, no matter where you are. Be willing to give up any excuses or self imposed limitations. Be willing to give up your fears, worries, and negative thoughts, and just immerse yourself wholeheartedly in your inner world. Stay there until the physical manifestations happen and resist the urge to check reality. That is the gist of my message in this book. The second is to remind readers to let go and stop trying so hard. If you have asked for something for the longest time and it has not manifested in your life, perhaps it is time to ease off a little. Examine what you have done in terms of the three-step process: outward, inward, and outward we went through earlier, and see how you may have unknowingly sabotaged your progress. Make peace with the things that are not yet manifest in your life. Instead of thinking of them as not ever manifesting, think of them as not yet manifest. They're on their way to you. They have to, if you apply these universal laws. Finally, the biggest tip is just to go out there and have fun with this stuff. Life is about joyful living and not about trying to make any of this work. Constantly remind yourself that I'm already doing things right. All I'm doing now is fine tuning my vibrations and seeing where life takes me. I'm curious about how my life can get even better with my new understanding. If you'll adopt this joyful attitude as you approach your manifestations, you'll soon be living your desired reality. And it can very well happen this afternoon if you allow it to.
Amazing. Blessings and love to you. I appreciate this conversation very much. You have been such a great help.
Pleasure is mine, and it is done.